For countless generations, humanity has gazed upon the moon as a constant companion, a silent guardian that has observed Earth long before our first civilizations emerged or the earliest words were written. It appeared unchanging, cold, and eternally mute. Yet, what if that silence was never true? What if the moon wasn't quiet but merely waiting, dormant, for the right call to awaken it? That haunting consideration has become an actual dilemma for astronomers nowadays. Recently, the phenomenon interstellar object called 3 Atlas has fascinated scientists around the globe with its eerie emerald radiance, irregular trajectory in space, and its sporadic spikes of unidentified energy. At first, it appeared that the mystery was just within Atlas alone. Then came an occurrence that everyone could not have foreseen. Atlas emitted a pulse right to the moon, and soon after, the moon replied. Devices all over the world started picking up signs that could not be explained, echoes too organized and intentional to be written off as static. For the very first time throughout recorded history, it seemed like Earth's lunar protector was never silent to begin with. The first evidence was from Australian and Spanish ground-based antennas that belong to the Deep Space Network and usually follow spacecraft around the solar system. What they received instead was even more bizarre, a strong, concentrated beam of energy, precise, aimed, and timed. Triangulating the source, astronomers were amazed. The signal had originated from 3 Atlas. In a matter of minutes of the pulse impacting the moon's surface, satellites in orbit around the moon started to detect anomalies. Radio emissions, completely novel and unexplained, arose from areas of the moon that had been quiet for decades, even from the far side that had never been visited by human technology. The moon, once a supposed dead world, had just replied. It wasn't a reflection or an echo, it was an actual response. Scientists who observed the data said the experience was choking, as if the air had disappeared. They weren't observing a celestial occurrence, they were seeing contact. Further scrutiny only deepened the enigma. The return signal from the moon didn't just duplicate Atlas's pulse, it had information within it. Trapped within its harmonics were strings of prime numbers, golden ratios, and spirals that matched exactly those embedded in Atlas's own emissions. There were aberrations, though, tiny time lags that suggested the pulse had traveled through dense matter before reappearing. The lunar seismographs, testaments to the Apollo missions, detected weak tremors in the crust, delicate vibrations in perfect time with the pulse. It was as though Atlas had pounded on the door, and something deep below the surface of the moon had stirred to open it. Some wrote it off as natural vibration, a cosmic tolling caused by the energy release. But others spoke of something far more disturbing. The moon wasn't just responding, it was broadcasting, as though something latent deep beneath its surface had heard the call and responded. The finding changed everything. This was no longer a matter of geology or craters. It suggested that our nearest celestial neighbor could be hiding secrets older than the planet itself, and Atlas would be the doorway to discovering them. The moon's response shook the world of science, compelling even doubters to question long-rejected hypotheses. Decades of French theorists had mused that the moon could not be purely natural. The hollow moon hypothesis, conceived from Apollo-era seismic data, asserted the moon's surface would chime like a bell when it was struck, resonating for much longer than predicted. Conventional science had dismissed it as a peculiar geologic aberration, until recently. The organized response to Atlas's pulse reopened the controversy. Might the moon contain hollow rooms or concealed structures meant to be activated only by special circumstances? Ancient texts surfaced, as well as age-old myths detailing the moon as a placed object, a second sun that had become a sentinel. What was once myth was now re-evaluated as a potential ancestral recollection of long-lost lore. The voice of the moon was not just sound, it was a message from the past, indicating that man had never been as isolated as he thought. Had Atlas reached out to the moon and the moon responded, the next question was a simple one and a terrifying one: what's next? Shortly afterward, astronomers noticed that every new pulse from Atlas was met with a corresponding emission from the moon, as if the two were engaged in a dialogue. More ominously, those signals soon began to take on geometric patterns, alignments that pointed unmistakably toward Earth. Was the moon serving as a go-between, channeling Atlas's message into our reality? Or had it been waiting, dormant, all along until this calling from outside the stars awakened it. The consequences were mind-boggling. The moon was no longer an unreliable object, but a player in an interstellar communication that left us out of the picture altogether. And as Atlas approached, fear mounted. If the moon could respond, then who, or what, was it responding to? When word of the moon's response spread, specialists in other fields participated in the inquiry. Archaeologists, linguists, and historians began studying the patterns contained within the signals. The spirals, the ratios, and the geometry harmonics corresponded with symbols discovered throughout human history: the spiral carvings at Newgrange in Ireland, the lunar calendars of the Maya, the Mesopotamian circular stone discs. The similarities were striking. Maybe the ancient peoples had seen this very encounter centuries ago, when Atlas last swept by our planet. The line dividing science from myth was beginning to blur. Humanity, at least, may have endured this cycle once before and lost memory. Simultaneously, the technology of Earth started to act erratically. Idle satellites in orbit around the moon suddenly sprang to life, broadcasting binary streams corresponding to Atlas's prime number patterns. Dead probes, long inactive, came back online, repeating the same cadence. Even terrestrial telescopes started picking up weak signals at frequencies that they were not designed to receive. It was as if all human devices that were meant to look at the universe had been hijacked, made into a part of Atlas's growing network. Humanity no longer just observed, it was now a participant. The repercussions extended far beyond devices. Seismographs around the globe detected rhythmic shaking, in sync with Atlas's beats. Magnetic compasses wildly whirled, occasionally pointing in directions that defied all logic. Emerald auroras lit up latitudes where lights like these had never been observed. Animals went crazy, birds patterned themselves geometrically in flight, tides rose and fell out of synchronization. Earth itself appeared to have entered the discussion, harmonizing with the moon and Atlas. Then, just as quickly as it started, the signals ceased. For 6 hours, the sky was quiet. Scientists believed the event was over, until they played back the data and heard a slight, intentional hum beneath the static, joining Earth, Moon, and Atlas in an invisible frequency past human ears. It wasn't silence, it was secret. The dialogue went on, but we weren't supposed to listen anymore. When optical telescopes shifted their sights back toward Atlas, they saw an even more anomalous thing. Every time the object flashed towards the moon, its emerald glow shattering into beams not constrained by natural physics. Those beams contained modulated frequencies identical to the echoes of the moon, which indicated Atlas wasn't just communicating via radio, it was encoding messages in light. Even the reflection of the moon shifted, scattering weak green arcs into space, turning the Earth-Moon system into a radiant beacon. Mankind was now clearly included in the transmission. Ancient records yielded the possibility that this may not have been the initial exchange of this sort. Soviet and Apollo data displayed the same lunar anomalies, cryptic vibrations, inexplicable radio bursts, all formerly considered noise. Even ancient Chinese records spoke of the moon sounding like a drum during eclipses. All at once, these long-forgotten observations took on a ghastly new significance. Atlas had probably been there before. The discussion had simply gone unheeded. Then, one evening, the whole world saw it. The moon started to glow softly at first, and then clearly with a green light of its own, pulsing in time with Atlas. Governments attempted to explain it away as an illusion, but millions of cameras revealed the reality. The moon was no longer merely reflecting sunlight, it was sending, radiating an unmistakable message out across the firmament. As Atlas approached the sun, its beats were synchronized to the moon's orbit. The rhythm changed every 27.3 days, perfectly in time with constellations such as Orion and Cassiopeia, the very same symbols that had been observed in the lunar echoes. It was apparent that Atlas and the moon were intentionally synchronizing, transmitting coordinates into deep space. Man was no longer just watching, it was in the midst of an enormous, cosmic alignment. But the phenomenon quickly became more invasive. Equipment everywhere in the world failed, reporting bizarre readings written in spirals and cryptic symbols. Spectrographs reconfigured themselves to Atlas's green frequency, and equipment not even switched on were blinking in harmony with lunar pulses. Observation had become active. Our equipment was now responding in Atlas's voice. In the still spaces between the pulses, researchers found weak ultra-low-frequency oscillations, rhythmic, patterned, nearly like speech. Linguists established the pattern was dialogue-like, with pauses, stress, and intonation. Atlas spoke, the moon replied, and then a third answered. A third presence had joined the conversation, its origin unknown. Later, the impact extended to common folk. Throughout the globe, a low rumble became audible to the human ear, a vibration that appeared to come from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. Pilots experienced the flickering of instruments, while creatures congregated in odd patterns. Some people reported feeling the throbs in their bones. Hospitals reported surges in neurological activity and accounts of geometric visions behind closed eyes. The moon was no longer communicating with machines, it was vibrating within human brains. The reality could not be denied, the moon had stirred to life. Atlas had unlocked the secret, and now the voice of the moon no longer addressed us, but something else. Shudders beneath the earth, rifts in time, and the green glow over its face all indicated one eerie truth: the moon had been waiting. Mankind, for the first time, had overheard a celestial conversation never intended for its hearing. Maybe the Earth itself is just one hub in a far older web spanning galaxies and time. The question that now freezes the heart is not whether the moon is alive, but what, or whom, has been eavesdropping all along.